rising from the sparkling ooze of a sea of starshine. Whence came the force? The mechanism that produced this cone of clarity? This not searchlight, but unlight, in the midst of light? Not from behind, that was certain. For turning I saw that behind us the mist was as thick. I turned again. It came to me, why I knew not, yet with an absolute certainty that the energy, the force emanated from the distant wall itself. The funnel, the cone, it did not expand from where we were standing now motionless. It began at the wall and focused upon us. Within the great circle, the surface of the wall was smooth, utterly blank. Upon it was no trace of those flitting lights we had seen before we had plunged down toward the radiant sea. It shone with a pale blue phosphorescence. It was featureless, smooth, a blind cliff of polished blue metal, and that was all. "Ruth!" groaned Ventnor. "Where is she?" Aghast at my mental withdrawal from him, angry at myself for my callousness, awkwardly I tried to crawl over to him, to touch him, comfort him as well as I might. And then, as though his cry had been a signal, the great cone began to move. Slowly the circled base slipped down the shimmering facades. Down, steadily down. I realized that we had paused at the edge of some steep declivity, for the bottom of the cone was now at a decided angle, while the upper edge of the circle had dropped a full 200 feet below the place where it had rested. And still it fell. There came a gasp of relief from Ventnor, a sigh from Drake, while, from my own heart, a weight rode. Not 10 yards ahead of us, and still deep within the luminosity, had appeared the regal head of Norhala, the lovely head of Ruth. The two rose out of the glow like swimmers floating from the depths. Now they were clear before us, and now we could see the surface of the cube on which they rode. But neither turned to us. Each stared straightly motionless along the axis of the sinking cone, the woman's left arm holding Ruth close to her side. Drake's hand caught my shoulder in a grip that hurt, nor did he need to point toward that which had wrung the exclamation from him. The funnel had broken from its slow falling. It had made one swift, startling drop and had come to rest. Its recumbent side was now flattened into a triangular plane, widening from the narrow tip in which we stood to all of 500 feet where its base rested against the blue wall, and falling at a full 30-degree pitch. The misty-edged circle had become an oval, a flattened ellipse another 500 feet high and 3 times that in length, and in its exact center, shining forth as though it opened into a place of pale azure incandescence, was another rectangular cyclopean portal. On each side of it, in the apparently solid face of the gleaming metallic cliffs, a slit was opening. They began as thin lines 100 yards in height, through which the intense light seemed to hiss. Quickly they opened, widening like monstrous cat pupils, until at last, their widening ceasing, they glared forth, the blue incandescence gushing from them like molten steel from an open sluice. Deep within them I sensed a movement. Scores of towering shapes swam within and glided out of them, each reflecting the vivid light as though they themselves were incandescent. Around their crests spun wide and flaming coronets. They rushed forth, wheeling, whirling, driven like leaves in a whirlwind. Out they swirled from the cat's eyes of the glimmering wall. These dervish obelisks crowded with spinning fires. They vanished in the mists. Instantly, with their going, the eyes contracted, were but slits, were gone. And before us, within the oval, was only the waiting portal. The leading block leaped forward. As abruptly, those that bore us followed. Again, under that strain of projectile flight, we clutched each other. The pony screamed in terror. The metal cliff rushed to meet us like a thundercloud of steel. The portal raced upon us, a square mouth of cold blue flame, and into it we swept, were devoured by it. Light and blinding, intolerable flood beat about us. blackening the sight with agony. We pressed, the three of us, against the side of the pony, burying our faces in its shaggy coat, striving to hide our eyes from the radiance which, strain closely as we might, seemed to pierce through the body of the little beast, through our own heads, searing the sight. End of chapter 9. The Meadow Monster by Abraham Merritt.